Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Monday, 30th June 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. United States President Donald Trump is anticipated to sign an executive order that will lift U.S. sanctions on Syria. Trade discussions with the U.S. have recommenced after Canada reversed its proposal to tax U.S. technology companies. The U.S. and Mexico are scheduled to reopen the U.S. border for Mexican cattle imports in July, following a screwworm outbreak. Taiwan now sends more exports to the U.S. than to China. A budget bill that is predicted to increase the national debt by $3.30 trillion over the next 10 years is moving forward in the U.S. Senate. The U.S. has opted not to participate in a global conference being held in Spain that is dedicated to combating poverty. Robinhood has introduced tokens that will allow e-users to trade in U.S. stocks. Australian shares are being impacted by news of U.S. rate jitters. Turning to Australia, Australian shares have reached a new peak amid ongoing trade talk optimism and recorded their strongest quarter since late 2020. The Australian Securities and Investments Commission, ASIC, is initiating legal action against Delta, a New South Wales coal power operator. Santos experienced a slight increase in value as Australia initiates a review of gas market regulation. In the latest from Canada, Prime Minister Mark Carney has announced that trade negotiations with the U.S. have restarted after Canada withdrew its plan to tax U.S. technology companies. Switching to Taiwan, the U.S. has overtaken China as Taiwan's primary export market. Meanwhile, in Mexico, plans are underway with the U.S. to reopen the border for Mexican cattle imports into the U.S. in July, following a screwworm issue. Regarding Syria, the United States is set to terminate its sanctions through an upcoming executive order. In Spain, a global conference is being held to address poverty, however. The U.S. is not participating. Across Asia, manufacturing is experiencing a renewed downturn as U.S. tariffs are poised to increase. On the global economic stage, gold prices have risen in the domestic futures market, as the dollar index reached a 52-week low, spurring higher demand. China's economic landscape is complex. A private survey showed factory activity surprisingly grew in June. This contrasts with the official PMI report. Goldman Sachs believes the crackdown on official banquets and alcohol will decrease spending. Electric car companies are lowering prices due to a surplus of vehicles. China has lifted its ban on Japanese seafood imports after nearly 2 years. The ban was originally due to concerns about Fukushima wastewater. Kokona Labs might move some production to China because of Trump-era tariffs. Baidu has released its Ernie 4.5 models on Hugging Face. In the United States, Meta is bolstering its AI division. They are hiring 4 key scientists from OpenAI. The metals company is seeking permission to mine for nickel and cobalt in the Pacific Ocean. India's central bank sees its economy as a major engine of global expansion. Defense stocks in India have surged in the first half of 2025 due to global tensions and expected budget increases. Experts recommend watching Bharat Dynamics and Federal Bank shares, given the volatile market. Hulk Foods India, an Assamese stock, hit a new high after its quick launch. Equity benchmarks in India are predicted to open higher, following Asian market trends. Apollo Hospitals shares rose after restructuring plans were revealed. The Reserve Bank of India has decreased its short forex derivative book to $65.20 billion. Bond trading in India is expected to begin the quarter calmly. Amul remains India's top food brand in 2025. Suppliers supporting Apple's Chinese manufacturing are now expanding into India. Sadly, an explosion and fire at a Telangana pharmaceutical factory caused at least 12 deaths and multiple injuries. Japan's manufacturers showed cautious optimism amidst worries about possible tariffs from President Trump. The country's bonds rallied after a strong 10-year bond sale, reducing the likelihood of central bank rate hikes. Natixis grew its banking presence in Japan by recruiting Kawamura from J. Morgan. Trade remained a key issue as President Trump threatened new tariffs, although the EU signaled openness to universal tariffs. Efforts to improve investor knowledge of the Japanese stock market continued, with Era Securities leading an educational seminar. The Gulf Cooperation Council, GTCC, and Japan began a second round of Free Trade Agreement, FDA, talks in Tokyo, aiming to deepen economic connections. The Nikkei stock index in Japan hit an 11-month peak, boosted by rising stocks that increased investors' willingness to take risks. Canada recently found itself at the center of a trade dispute with the United States. The White House asserted that Canada relented to pressure from President Trump by abandoning its digital services tax. This decision came after Trump threatened to halt trade negotiations if Canada persisted with the tax, which he decried as a direct assault on the U.S. The S&P TX Composite Index saw a positive close, rising by 0.62%, as Canada's digital tax suspension garnered renewed market interest. Analysts note that the Canadian government faces a challenging situation, having attempted to implement policies targeting both American and Chinese tech giants. Asian stock markets are displaying a mixed performance, shaped by influences such as U.S. stock rallies, trade deal optimism, and currency fluctuations. Japan's market sentiment is cautious due to tariff warnings, despite overall positive regional trends. Taiwan witnessed a sharp drop in the Taiwan dollar. Broader Asian foreign exchange markets have seen gains this month, supported by a weakening U.S. dollar. Meanwhile, Asian banks are expanding their influence in the Middle East, contributing over $2 billion in loan activity. Europe is facing a significant heat wave, particularly in southern Europe, heightening the danger of wildfires across Italy, Spain, and Greece as temperatures soar above 40 degrees Celsius. European stocks have largely declined, impacted by issues like U.S. tax bill challenges and ongoing trade discussions. Wind energy stock Vestas suffered particularly heavy losses. Overall, European shares recorded monthly losses as markets closely monitored trade negotiations. In Germany, savings banks, known as Sparkassen, intend to provide crypto trading services via the EU's markets in crypto assets. After the EU's markets in crypto assets, MiCA regulations take effect. Expanding its crypto offerings, Robinhood is introducing perpetual futures and staking in both the EU and the US, alongside unveiling stock tokens and a Layer 2 blockchain. Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, PIF, has seen substantial growth, increasing its assets by 18% to reach $1.15 trillion, primarily due to the strong performance of its portfolio companies and ongoing investment initiatives. Meanwhile, shareholders of Aqua Power, a prominent Saudi company, have given the green light to a $1.90 billion rights issue. The Saudi EPO market generated $2.80 billion proceeds during the first half of the year, spearheaded by Flyness. Regarding trade, Saudi Arabia is implementing anti-dumping duties on imports of stainless steel from China and Taiwan. Internationally, Saudi Arabia has emphasized the need for equitable climate financing during a recent session of the Human Rights Council. Ukraine is at the forefront of modern warfare strategies, serving as a testing ground for new military tactics. Germany continues to support Ukraine by expediting its weapons manufacturing processes. This assistance aims to strengthen Ukraine's leverage in any future peace negotiations with Russia. Turning to the United Kingdom, the automotive sector has received a reprieve from newly reduced US tariffs. However, tariffs on UK steel exports to the US are still being evaluated. Domestically, a prominent UK bank is enticing new customers with a £185 incentive for switching their accounts. Thailand is currently navigating a landscape of technological ambition and governmental adjustments. Experts at CNBC's East Tech West 2025 in Thailand explored strategies for emerging nations to develop independent, sovereign AI systems. Simultaneously, the Thai Prime Minister has undertaken a cabinet reshuffle aimed at solidifying his government's position. Adding to the economic dynamism, Thai businesses, along with their Southeast Asian counterparts, are showing a growing preference for Hong Kong as the primary location for launching overseas initial public offerings, IPOs. Malaysia is poised for significant economic growth, with Eve Energy's substantial investment of 8.65 billion yuan, $1.20 billion, in a new EV battery factory in Kuala Kedah, expected to be completed in 2.5 years. Adding to the positive economic outlook, the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, HKSS, demonstrated robust performance, opening steadily and mirroring the strong market dynamics observed in the first half of 2025, as reported by Business Today Malaysia. Germany's inflation rate dipped to 2% in June, surprisingly meeting the European Central Bank's ECB target. Sparkassen, a significant German banking group, intends to provide cryptocurrency trading services to its vast customer base of 50 million by 2026. Focusing on international support, Germany is dedicated to helping Ukraine increase its weapons production. This effort aims to strengthen Ukraine's leverage in possible peace negotiations with Russia. Geopolitical tensions are influencing air travel and costs worldwide, while France's Orange is expanding into the defense sector. The United States and Europe are striving for a trade framework as Singapore's DTC Pay collaborates with MasterCard to streamline global money transfers. Europe is anticipating a limited trade agreement with the United States. Greece has appointed a hard-right lawmaker as its new migration minister. Portugal's data center market is booming, attracting investments from ASIC, Edged Energy, Quetta Data Centers, and Templus. A Swiss economist is warning that potential tariffs from Trump could cost Switzerland CAF $17.5 billion. Tensions are on the rise between Russia and Azerbaijan after a raid on a Russian media outlet in Azerbaijan's capital. Russia has summoned Azerbaijan's OI following the detentions of journalists. The South African rand is holding steady despite mixed economic data, with investors awaiting us jobs figures. Gauteng is expected to be the priciest province for groceries in South Africa in 2025. Starlink intends to invest R2 billion in South Africa. Altre Capital's blended finance fund is channeling investment into African ventures that address gender inequality and climate change. Petrobras in Brazil is backing offshore oil exploration and production in São Paulo. Investors in Brazil are increasingly factoring in the risks posed by criminal factions. The United Arab Emirates has received its first flying taxi from Joby Aviation. Iran's stock market is facing a crisis after a recent 12-day conflict. Mexico has enacted an anti-money laundering bill in response to US accusations against Mexican banks. Indonesia's incoming administration, led by Prabowo Subianto, will face significant costs to implement its free lunch program. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.